CEO Daddy, Chapter 1234, Who Needed to Be Educated. Had this little interlude just passed? No, it was not over yet. After the second stop, Alvina Miller was stopped. She had one hand on her waist and the other on her forehead. Why was she so hard to go home? I am Joseph Grant's girlfriend. This is my ID card. Please check it. I am Joseph Grant's woman. My identity card. Can I go in now? Alvina Miller finally reached the entrance of the ancient building, and the guard at the entrance asked her to say this sentence again. Alvina Miller's mood had already reached the edge of collapse. Was this torture? If she had to say that every day on and off duty, she would definitely go crazy. At this point, it was already dark. Alvina Miller had originally wanted to hurry back, but now, with just this short trip, it had delayed her for more than 10 minutes. She was heartbroken. There was a light in the living room. Alvina Miller opened her eyes and quickly ran towards the living room. She saw that the man on the red wooden sofa was only wearing a pure white shirt. With one hand was holding onto a glass of red wine, while the other was holding onto a cigarette, leisurely smoking and drinking, enjoying the peace. Joseph Grant, what's going on? Why am I being questioned and examined today? What happened? Of course, Alvina Miller did not want to blame it on this man. After all, his identity was noble and his bad relationship with the president was growing stronger and stronger. There were more and more bad people who wanted to deal with him, so it was necessary to defend him on the way home. Alvina Miller was worried because she was afraid that something would happen to him. Do you say that? Joseph Grant's lips curled up slightly, and after that, he put out the cigarette that he had, which was only half smoked, in the ashtray beside him. Of course, I'm going to say it. Can they allow me in if I don't say that? Am I allowed to say that wherever I go in the future? Is this a master key? Alvina Miller chuckled as she sat beside him, looking deeply moved. Then you remember this. Don't forget it. Joseph Grant suddenly turned his face over. His eyes were deep like the ocean, which contained a hint of emotion, staring straight at the woman's smirking face. Yes, I will remember. This is the key for me to walk everywhere. Alvina Miller smirked at him. Then do you know the meaning behind those words? Joseph wouldn't just let things go like this. He had to take a lesson to this woman and asked her to remember it well. What does that mean? Isn't it just a casual remark? Alvina Miller just thought simply. She only understood what it meant in the word. Joseph Grant was so angry by her words that his face turned black. He extended a finger and furiously pressed it against her forehead. Listen to me. Since you say that you are my woman, then you must know the rules to be my woman. Do I still have to follow the rules? Alvina Miller really did not consider such a comprehensive thing. She had always treated herself as a bachelor and lived her life. That's right, it's to guard the rule of the woman. What do you do when you eat at the first dining hall today? Joseph Grant originally did not want to bring up this matter, but he still brought it up, since he could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. Just eating. What's wrong? Why, you know that I am eating at the first dining hall. Alvina Miller's beautiful eyes widened in shock. Because I am standing in the doorway watching you go in. Joseph Grant gritted his teeth in hatred. Really? You see me? Why don't you come in and say hello? When Alvina Miller heard it, she immediately smiled and asked, if I greet you, will you still care about me? Joseph Grant laughed coldly. What is wrong with you? Why are you so angry today? No matter how casual Alvina Miller was, she knew that something was wrong. Joseph was extremely unhappy today, even unhappier than others. As a newcomer, you seem to be very popular in male colleagues, Joseph Grant sarcastically said. It's not bad. They are quite enthusiastic and they even help me with my work. Alvina Miller immediately replied openly. Why are they helping you? Joseph Grant really wanted to use something to knock her awake. This piece of foolish girl. Would men have nothing to offer her? There's no other reason. It's normal for colleagues to help each other. Alvina Miller spread out her two small hands and said with a righteous tone. Joseph Grant's eyes subconsciously narrowed. Unknowingly, Alvina Miller was wearing this black and white uniform, but to him, it was indescribably beautiful. From her white and tender face to the top button of her collar, revealing her beautiful and slender neck, which made people want to directly tear open her collar and see if the skin inside was as tender and smooth as the one on her face, and wanted to ruthlessly rub it. Why are you looking at me like that? Alvina Miller noticed that something was wrong with his gaze, and immediately jumped to the side. Her beautiful eyes also flickered with panic, wanting to avoid Joseph's gaze, but Joseph himself gave off a sense of pressure, not to mention the unknown emotion in his eyes, which made her feel like she was a little prey being hunted by a wild beast, while she had nowhere to run to. For a man to be so attentive to a woman, it means that he has taken a fancy to her. Next up, he will pursue her and do his best to obtain her. The man's deep and charming voice emotionlessly spoke. Is that so? After Alvina Miller heard that, she only gave simple reply. Then, she tilted her head and thought for 2 seconds as she pointed at Joseph with her little finger. You have also been very attentive to me before, so have you taken a fancy to me? Come after me next? You still want to get me? The imposing manner that Joseph Grant had painstakingly built up was instantly broken off when she retorted with these words. His handsome face instantly flushed red. He picked up the glass of red wine beside his hand and drank it all in one gulp. Alvina Miller, you haven't made me lose my mind yet. Don't be so arrogant. The man turned angry from embarrassment. Only now did he realize that he was completely unable to educate this woman, because she was born to be a bad student. I know, I don't need you to remind me. Alvina Miller was suddenly furious. How could this man say such hurtful words? He really did not leave any face for others. Joseph Grant saw Alvina lowered her head and entwined her small hands together, looking as though she had suffered a grievance yet did not dare to protest, which made him love dearly. You're not allowed to talk to other men next time, nor are you allowed to smile at them. Joseph Grant did not know how he got the anger from, but it was an extremely overbearing request. No, Alvina Miller immediately rejected his offer. My first job is to smile while facing guests. How is it possible that you asked me not to laugh? Joseph Grant's expression froze. Indeed, what he had said was a bit too ridiculous. I mean, you are not allowed to flirt with other men in private, so you should consider my feelings. You have become one with all the men in the cafeteria today. If a relationship is made public in the future, wouldn't I have an endless green hat? Joseph Grant finally set out all of his bad mood. Since it was extremely uncomfortable to hold it in, he might as well make it clear. This time, Alvina Miller could finally hear it clearly. She stood up with some disbelief. Joseph Grant, what nonsense are you talking about? When do I flirt around with them? I just talk to them about my work. Do you suspect me? Alvina Miller's eyes instantly reddened. So, The reason Joseph Grant had a cold expression just now was because he saw her talking to another man in the cafeteria. He even misunderstood that she wanted to bring him a green hat. I see it with my own eyes. I don't doubt you. Joseph Grant turned his face aside and pursed his lips. Seeing it with your own eyes might not be the truth. I don't believe that you would never chat with a woman in your life other than me and your mother. Alvina Miller immediately retorted. I know what I'm doing. I won't easily accept someone else's gift, but you accepted a man's milk. I paid him. Do you see that? Alvina Miller was so angry that she stared with her beautiful eyes wide open. Following that, she suddenly squinted her eyes. Do you know what it means to wear a green hat? Let me tell you. It's like this. Alvina Miller immediately pounced over. Her pink lips fiercely bit down on the man's lips twice. Only then did she loosen her lips, and took a step back. Mr. Vice President, you have to read more. The relationship between men and women is too complicated. You should really learn it. Chapter 1235, Don't Abandon Each Other. The man only felt a slight pain on his lips. When he finally reacted, the girl had already slipped away. He extended his hand towards his lips and touched it. Blood? This woman actually didn't come to kiss him, but really bit him. She must be a dog. Joseph Grant, who had been forcefully kissed by a woman for the first time, sat alone on the sofa, stunned for a long time. Finally, he came to the conclusion that the woman was angry. He should have been angry. So how could she be angry enough to bite him? Joseph Grant didn't try to find any fault with himself at all. And of course, he didn't really blame Alvina Miller either. Alvina Miller angrily ran upstairs. She had never heard such unreasonable words in her life. Joseph Grant actually said that she was a woman with a skittish woman. She would not take the blame. The sky outside the window was completely dark. Alvina Miller leaned against the door and gasped for breath. Just now, she purposely bit him hard. She didn't know if she was biting him painfully. Couldn't they get along well? Why did he want to break the silence? Alvina Miller laid on the bed weakly. She did not want to go downstairs to face him anymore. However, at 7:30, there was a knock on the door. Alvina Miller was startled, and immediately stood up. She tidied her long hair and opened the door. Her beautiful eyes stared at the man wearing a white shirt at the door. She asked in a muffled voice, "Do you want to teach me a lesson again?" "No, I want to call you out for dinner," Joseph Grant said in a low voice. "Go out to eat? Aren't you cooked at home?" Alvina Miller was slightly surprised. "I'm not cooking today. It's a date between a man and a woman. Don't they always go out to eat? It is boring to eat at home." Joseph Grant pulled down his rolled-up sleeves and gracefully buttoned them while speaking slowly. To the guild, Alvina Miller's breathing paused, and her flawless white face was dyed with a hint of color. Did Joseph Grant want to date her? Her heart was beating so fast. Alvina Miller subconsciously held her breath, and pretended to be calm and said, "All right then. Since you are sincerely treating me to a meal, let's forget about the unhappy thing just now. As long as you promise not to talk about personal feelings with other men, I won't cause any more trouble." Of course, Joseph Grant would not be willing to admit his mistake just like that. "Of course not. I'm not that casual." Alvina Miller glared at him boldly and confidently. She was a woman with a bottom line and principles. Unless she loved someone, she would try to seduce him. If she didn't chat with the man, and she even didn't look the man. His heartbeat would not beat fast. "All right, I believe you. As Joseph Grant said that, he reached out and ruffled her long hair. With a light smile, he said, "Let's go. It's cold outside. You have to wear more." "Got it," Alvina Miller answered in a low voice, but she felt as if her heart had been brushed by a feather, itchy and numb, a very unfamiliar and uneasy feeling. Now that it was his private time, so Alvina Miller took off her professional attire and changed into her usual casual attire, which showed that she was more youth than before. More not, she just liked the sunshine. She was standing beside a man in a black suit. Their temperament and aura didn't match, but they were indescribably pleased. The place Joseph Grant brought Alvina Miller to eat was not some romantic restaurant. It was the places he would frequent to socialize with other people. It was the public ones, but it was also open to private individuals. Alvina Miller had been here before, and the first time she saw Joseph and ate with him after she returned. At the time, she was still completely strange to Joseph Grant, and felt that he looked young, but his temperament was sophisticated and sophisticated, making people feel oppressed. Now that they were here again, Alvina Miller felt that she was not nervous at all. Following behind him, she could see the clean sideburns on his back which outlined his distinct face. From this angle, this man was also extremely handsome. "Mr. Vice President, it's rare for you to come here to eat in private." Suddenly, a few middle-aged men walked out from a box and greeted him with a smile. When Joseph Grant saw these people, he subconsciously moved in front of Alvina Miller to block her path, and said indifferently, "There's some private matters we need to discuss." Those few men wanted to size up Alvina Miller. However, Alvina Miller didn't want them to stare at her like that, so she directly hid behind Joseph Grant's wide back. "Is this the young Miss of Miller family? Mr. Vice President is so lucky. Miss Miller family is so beautiful and young." One of them spoke respectfully, but there was also a hint of unease in his tone. "Thank you for your praise. We'll be leaving first." Saying that, Joseph Grant turned and headed towards the corridor. Alvina Miller quickly followed him. The men looked at each other for a moment, then left. Of course, Alvina Miller recognized the identity of the few middle-aged men. She heard that they were honest to the old president. So, when they saw Joseph Grant, they naturally had fake smiles on their faces. After entering the private box, Alvina Miller said first, "Is my performance just now not enough to satisfy you?" "Why do you say that?" Joseph Grant picked a chair and sat down. He swept over her, and smiled as he asked her, "Don't you ask me to pretend to be a bad relationship with you? But just now when I lean towards you, would they be able to know anything?" Alvina Miller asked nervously. "Is that so? What do you think they will know?" Joseph Grant raised his eyebrows and looked at her in interest. Alvina Miller was an honest and good child. Of course she would tell him the truth. "I'm afraid that they will know that we had a good relationship." "Are we on good relationship?" Joseph Grant continued to ask. "It's not bad." Alvina Miller nodded blankly. "Was that not good?" Seeing her confused expression, Joseph Grant could not help but laugh. This woman's mind was sometimes too simple. Even when he wanted to use some tricks, he did not want to bite on her. "What are you laughing at?" "I don't want to care about you anymore. I'm thinking for your sake." Seeing that he was not only explaining things to her but also mocking her, she instantly got angry from embarrassment. Joseph Grant suddenly patted his thighs. "Come here, sit with me." Alvina Miller was shocked by his invitation. "Sit closer so I can explain it to you." Joseph Grant hid the danger in his eyes. Alvina Miller quickly moved a chair over, leaned on his side, and sat down. She said smilingly, "I'm sitting very close to you right now. Quickly tell me, did I cause you any trouble just now?" "No." Joseph Grant was a little disappointed. It seemed that he still could not make this woman listen to him. "Then will they treat me as your weakness and use me to deal with you?" This was what Alvina Miller was most worried about. She didn't want to escape from the Miller family and jump into the tornado. "No," Joseph Grant replied lightly. "How can you be so sure?" Alvina Miller blinked her eyes. "Because we are not married yet, and I have not expressed anything to you in the outside world. We have only eaten together and there will be no serious consequences." Joseph Grant snorted. "If that's the case, then let's not come out to eat next time. We can just cook and eat at home." Alvina Miller still felt that it was risky to come out like this. "I'm sorry," the man suddenly spoke up. Alvina Miller was startled, and asked curiously, "Why do you want to apologize to me? It must be boring to be with me, and I couldn't give you a relaxed life like other men." The reason why Joseph Grant had never dared to find a girlfriend was because he did not have confidence in himself. It was just that, for him to admit that he had an abject sense of inferiority, it was extremely painful. "All right, even though it's the truth, I don't dislike you. I feel that marriage isn't something that is full of passion every day. What every woman wants is a meticulous and responsible man." Alvina Miller replied while laughing, "Don't you really mind me being too bored?" Joseph Grant also wanted to be a man who can say something that women would like to hear, but he was born not to say it, so he was troubled too. "As long as you don't suspect me in the future, nothing else will be a problem," Alvina Miller replied. "I'm sorry, I don't think that I would care so much about you." Joseph Grant immediately admitted it at this moment. "You care about me." Alvina Miller's beautiful eyes lit up, and she lowered her head and smiled like a flower. Chapter 1236. It's time to see the parents. Joseph Grant was a man with reserved emotions. Although there were many girls who had expressed their love and admiration towards him since he was young, but they had never heard a sentence that expressed the loving feelings from him. He did not like to express his feelings, and was even more afraid of refusing. Now, the existence of Alvina liked a seductive hook that hooked the man's deep feeling in his genital in the heart little by little. "Order it." Seeing the girls blushing, Joseph Grant was slightly embarrassed and quickly took out the menu for her to see. Alvina Miller laughed as she ate, while choosing her own favorite dish. After they ordered, the atmosphere suddenly became heavy, and they didn't even dare to exchange glances, becoming shy. "Did I bite your lips just now? There seems to be some blood stains." Alvina Miller secretly looked at him a few times, and finally realized that his lips seemed to have been cut a little, and there were traces of blood on it that had not been dried, although it was difficult to find it, if she did not look carefully. Now that she had found it, she felt ashamed. "It's fine. It doesn't hurt." Joseph Grant shook his head and replied softly, "Next time, it's better that you don't make me angry, because if I am angry, I would go crazy. Even I am afraid of myself." Alvina Miller reminded him jokingly, "Is that so? Do you really know how to eat people?" Joseph Grant immediately followed up with a humorous remark, breaking the gloomy atmosphere. Joseph Grant felt that she was extremely cute, and she was indeed like a little kitten that could bring its fangs and brandishing its claws, making people both hate and love her. "Alvina, I'll be obedient in the future. I won't make you angry anymore." Joseph Grant felt that he could no longer bear to provoke her with those bright and clear eyes of hers. "That may not be true." Alvina Miller stretched out her claws and made a grabbing motion towards him. Alvina Miller could not believe what she heard. Was this what Vice President had said? Obedience? This was something the master wanted the pet to do. Why Joseph Grant still said it on himself? Did he know that saying such a thing would increase her evil feeling? "Joseph Grant, your words are very easy to make people think other evil things. You are only allowed to say it to me. You are not allowed to say it to other women. Do you understand?" Alvina Miller immediately became movie queen, and then displayed the demeanor of a queen, wanting to completely subdue him. Joseph Grant's handsome eyes froze, and he instantly became speechless. As the dishes were being served, Joseph Grant's phone suddenly rang. He looked at it and muttered, "I have a call, you eat first." "All right." Alvina Miller nodded. Just that. Alvina Miller's ears perked up as she saw he walked to the side of the balcony to pick up the phone. The first word that came out of his mouth was actually "Mom." Alvina Miller heard the word clearly, and her entire body shivered. Joseph Grant's mother was looking for him. Could it be that they went to see his parents? Joseph Grant whispered to each other for a while before he took off his phone and sat down. "My mother will come over to see you tomorrow night," Joseph Grant said calmly. Alvina Miller was so frightened that she couldn't even hold on to her chopsticks properly. Her beautiful face was full of nervousness and uneasiness. "Your mother wants to see me? What if she's not satisfied with me?" Joseph Grant was elated upon hearing her question, and laughed. "Aren't you very confident in yourself? Why are you afraid to?" "Because since I was young, I have never known how to please the elders. At home, I am known for being dumb." Alvina Miller was truly afraid of meeting his elders, and felt that she would definitely be a silly person. The elders always preferred those girls who were knowledgeable and generous. "It's fine. I accompany you all the time." Joseph Grant reached out and patted her shoulder lightly. Alvina Miller smirked. "If your mother don't fancy me, would you give me up? My mom has a worse eye than me. She will definitely like you." Joseph Grant smiled and comforted her. What Alvina Miller could hear the mockery in his words and could not help but pout her lips and glare at him resentfully. Joseph Grant laughed out once again. He suddenly realized that when he was with this woman, the smile on his face became much wider. Furthermore, his pent-up emotions that were accumulated for the entire day also calmed down a lot. This woman was his medicine. After going through so many ways to investigate, Gabriel Addison had finally made him vaguely guess who was obstructing him. Leo William. Gabriel Addison gritted his teeth in anger. He must be taking revenge for Marianne and her mother. Gabriel Addison slammed his palm heavily on the table and he looked even more sinister with the consecutive days of anxiety caused his eyes to go dark. It was fine if Leo didn't help him, but Leo actually stopped him from climbing upwards. Could it be that Bellanne and her daughter begged him to do so? Gabriel Addison was not at the right moment in his mind, and he would naturally think of the worst-case scenario. It seems that it was impossible for him to stand in Joseph Grant's team. Moreover, his hope of going up to another floor was completely destroyed. Could it be that his path had led him to this step? Gabriel Addison was not willing to give up. He had to find Bellanne to justify her actions. Thus, he directly called Bellanne. Bellanne picked it up and heard Gabriel Addison asking angrily, "Bellanne, you've always told me that you've let me go. and that as long as I don't go find Mary, you won't owe me anything. Why are you targeting me now? Belen did not understand what he was saying, and coldly said, Gabriel Addison, if you want to go crazy, you shouldn't look for me, right? If you want to complain, just go look for your wife. Do you ask Leo William do this? I am begging for people to come into contact with me but fail. So it turns out that you are disturbing me. Are you trying to take revenge on me? Gabriel Addison's words were extremely sharp and filled with anger. Belen had already known his purpose for promoting. Now that she heard him say this, she understood his meaning. You can't be the mayor. Are you blaming me? Gabriel Addison, I told you before, borrowing a woman to be your successor was a very shameless action. But now, the god doesn't even want to help you anymore. Who can you blame? Are you mocking me? Gabriel Addison was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He hated it when others said that he relied on women, because that was the truth and it was also his disgraceful actions. So he did not want to hear about it. What I say is the truth, yet you say it's a mockery. Who exactly is feeling guilty? Belen sneered again and again. Belen, at least I've fallen in love with you for a while. Can't you let me go? Why does Leo William have to do this? You really do find a good son-in-law. Gabriel Addison knew that he could not do anything to Belen, so he could only lower her voice and beg her. I don't ask him to do that, but if he's willing to help me teach you a lesson, I'm happy to see him do it. After Belen said that, she hung up. Gabriel Addison angrily threw his phone on the table. He could not let others look down on him. He wanted to retaliate. It was rare for Gabriel Addison to have such tenacity, but very quickly, he was stumped, because, who could he resist against? At home, he tried to be an example as a good husband. At work, he tried to be an example as a good leader. All his life, he had been acting as a good man. Is this the end of my life? Gabriel Addison looked out of the window in despair. The setting sun only radiated a faint light. It did not even give people a little bit of warmth. It was as if he was the only one whose light was left so dim, without any hope at all. Just as Gabriel Addison felt that he had lost all hope, the door to his office suddenly opened, and an extremely strong lady walked in. It was his wife, Beverly Batts. She threw her expensive handbag onto his desk. I've heard that you've been walking around to curry favor with the Grant family. Shouldn't you explain? Beverly, who tell you that nonsense? How could I do that? Seeing her powerful wife, Gabriel Addison immediately went over to comfort her with a smile. Don't say it to me. If I have no evidence, I wouldn't have come to you. Gabriel, we have been married for so many years. You have always been supporting my father. You also know the relationship between my father and the old president. So by doing this, what are you going to do to our Batts family? Beverly Batts slapped on the table heavily with her hands, her well-preserved face filled with anger. Gabriel Addison was unhappy, but after suddenly getting scolded in front of his wife, he suddenly became angry, and said with a heavy voice, "Has your father gone senile? Could it be that he couldn't see what the common people desired? Old president has already stayed in this position for a few years but has not done anything. The citizens are suffering, and old president should have stepped down by now. Now, everyone is supporting a capable leader. People all prefer to Joseph Grant. If I do not choose him, am I seeking death? You actually dared to insult my father." Beverly Batts' face was filled with anger, because, from the moment they were married until now, Gabriel Addison always had a good husband and son-in-law's temper, so this was the first time he got angry. Chapter 1237. Two-sided nature of marriage. Gabriel Addison looked at the woman in front of him, whose expression turned extremely ugly. Only now did he realize that he was finally unable to hold back and had said everything he wanted to say. He knew that the consequences of his words would harm the feelings between husband and wife. I'm just talking about reality. I just hope that your father can understand the current situation. Okay, Gabriel Addison, did you not like my Bats family anymore? Ever since you sat in the position of deputy mayor, you have become even more proud and arrogant. In these past few years, our marriage has been like a pool of stagnant water, devoid of passion, warmth, and care. I am a dignified young lady. Why am I so blind to marry you? Beverly Bats had been holding back her anger these past few years as well. A few years ago, when they were still considered to be love each other, this man was even more obedient and gentle to herself, and he seemed to be very considerate. Whether it was because she was old or because he had his own thoughts, Beverly Bats did not know, but gradually, they stopped greeting each other. Even if they were to live together, it was still a dream for them to be together in the same bed. She believed that any woman cannot stand such a marriage. No moisturizing, only constant consumption and torture. You have finally said these things. After all, you must have endured too much during these years. Beverly Bats, I already said that I broke up with you, and at the time, I already felt that we were not suitable and the background between our families were also unsuitable, and that we could not live a happy life. But what about you? You wailed and begged me to marry you. Beverly Bats, is it my responsibility to be what I am today? What's worst, you secretly gave birth to a daughter to threaten me to marry you, and I tell you, you make it all because of today's fruit. After so many years, I have still been worthy of you. I have always listened to everything. I have never had the right to speak at home. I have been laughed at by my colleagues. I have had enough of cold eyes. Since you had looked down on me from the beginning, let's get divorced. Gabriel Addison was already sad before, but now, his wife had added his angry, and had cheated on him. He really couldn't take this kind of pressure, and he could only seek a way out. Gabriel Addison, you, Beverly Bats looked at the man in front of her who had an unfamiliar face, and she was shocked. In her memories, Gabriel Addison always had a good temper. At home, even when he was a noble deputy mayor, he would frequently cook for the three of them when he was free. At the time, the atmosphere was still very good. But why? But now why they were on the verge of divorce? It's good that you're gone. Now that you're free to go, I won't be in your way anymore. I don't need to be like a dog or an ox, working for you day and night to curry your favor and make you happy. Gabriel Addison's heart was as cold as ice. When his thoughts clashed with his will, it was as if he had taken back the power to speak. He was no longer afraid. He was no longer afraid of anything. Beverly Bats looked at him in shock. There was disbelief, fear, unease, and a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Gabriel Addison, this is your office. Aren't you afraid that it will affect your reputation if we quarrel like this? Beverly Bats's voice trembled with unease. Is this the first time we're making such a ruckus? When you are unhappy, you come here directly. Do you knock the door before you enter my office? Beverly Bats, you want to give me face now, but unfortunately, I have long been disgraced. Gabriel Addison's voice was getting louder and louder. but he was also venting the pain in his heart. Gabriel Addison, do you have to be so angry at me? I am your wife, and we have 2 children. You can't do this to me. Beverly Batts's aura immediately weakened as she covered her face and sobbed uncontrollably, as if she had suffered a huge loss of courage. Can you speak reason other than crying? In the Batts family, you are the eldest young girl. When you marry me, you are my queen. What else do you want me to do? You say, you can only let me go if I die, right? Gabriel Addison's eyes were also filled with tears. His thoughts had been completely emptied by life. His self-esteem had been shaken, and he was crying bitterly under the pressure. Beverly Batts was completely dumbstruck this time. She looked at Gabriel Addison in a daze, and felt that she had only known him for the first time. She knew that he actually had such a cold and heartless side. I'll give you both children. Divorce. Gabriel Addison leaned his hands on the table, lowered his head, withdrew his tears, and said 2 sentences with a ruthless heart. Beverly Batts was like a bolt out of the blue, striking her speechless for a long time. She thought that Gabriel Addison would never be able to say the word divorce to her in his entire life, because this man's nature was weak, and he needed to rely on the power of the Batts family. Gabriel Addison, we can't get a divorce. You think about your work. Think about how the kids feel about you. I used to be bad to you. I know I'm wrong. I will change it in the future, but we cannot get a divorce yet. You say I wouldn't knock on the door before I enter. I wouldn't come to your unit to argue with you in the future. But you can't leave with me. This was the first time Beverly Batts submitted to him. Tears immediately flowed out as she anxiously tried to persuade Gabriel Addison to take back his suggestion. Gabriel Addison sat on the chair in silence. His eyes were not looking at her for a long time. Then, as if he had made a decision, no, I've decided, we must get a divorce. I must leave. Gabriel Addison, are you crazy? What happened to you today? You mentioned divorce. Divorce? How do you want me to live? I'm sure people will take me for a joke. The reason why Beverly Batts didn't divorce was because she had always been a model that people admired among the group of sisters, because she had a good husband who was good to her and was obedient. Furthermore, she was also proud of this fact, and felt that she had the ability to control her husband, and a lot of people had specially come to ask her about it. But now, her proud marriage lit up a red light. That considerate and obedient husband suddenly became ruthless and wanted to divorce her. He didn't even want to have a child. This was a disaster for him. She could not agree to it even if she died. Otherwise, her pride and reputation for the rest of her life would all be ruined. Gabriel Addison raised his head, and laughed coldly. That's right, your face is more important. You selfish woman. From the beginning, you are the only one who cares about yourself. Do you really regard me as your husband? It's my fault, dear. I've been having this bad habit since I was young. All these years, I've changed a lot of bad habits, and I'm not even afraid of having children, but I'm afraid that you'll divorce me. I loved you forever. The atmosphere changed, and Beverly Batts immediately went back to beg Gabriel. I give you a chance before, but you go overboard each time. Beverly Batts, I've thought it clearly. I don't want this job anymore. I must divorce you. Gabriel Addison's heart was like a pool of stagnant water. He felt that if he continued to stay depressed, he would suffer more than death. He envied the previous mayor Bart for having the courage to jump down the stairs. After dying, he was released. No, I won't get a divorce. No, Beverly Beth suddenly recovered her momentum, and after that, she stared at Gabriel Addison and asked, "Do you have another woman? Which vixen is it? Is it the ones outside the door? Let's see if I can't rip off their faces. How dare they seduce my husband?" Beverly Bats, if there's a problem, you never find out the reason from yourself, and only feel that others have made a mistake. Let me tell you, I would rather go to a temple and be a monk. I don't have any thoughts about you. You are living a delicate life. I think you are very beautiful, but you are completely devoid of the charm of a woman. You only have power. When Gabriel Addison heard that Beverly Bats was going to find trouble with the employees outside the door, he was so angry that his face turned black. "What do you say? Why have I been trying to make myself beautiful all these years? You actually hate me now." Gabriel Addison takes care of yourself. All those years ago you were handsome, you had a sweet mouth, and you could say things that made people happy, but now, you don't even talk to me for a long time. Which slut do you speak to with your sweet words? I find her and deal with her. Beverly Bats was still certain that Gabriel Addison had other women. If not, he would not dare to get a divorce. But there must be other women trying to incite him from behind his back. "Get out. I don't want to see you." Gabriel Addison was simply about to go crazy from her anger. Divorce. Don't even think about getting a single cent. Before Beverly Bats left, she said something fierce. Gabriel Addison was like a log, unable to move, his face ashen. Chapter 1238. Completely cut off all thoughts from one's mind. Mary Ann drove to the home. In addition to her work, she accompanied with only two of the most important people. Leo William was also happy, because Brianna didn't try to stop them anymore. They could fall in love as they wished. Mary Ann parked the car in the car park and took the car key with her as she walked home. Suddenly, she saw a person. It was Gabriel Addison. He sat on the stairs in front of her door, causing Mary Ann's face to change greatly, and she immediately walked over with large strides and asked coldly, "Why are you here? Who allowed you to sit here?" Gabriel Addison raised his head, and his gray eyes gained a bit of spirit when he saw his daughter. "Mary, I'm preparing to divorce Beverly Bats. I have nowhere else to go. I don't know why I'm here. I just want to sit here." It must be the lowest day for Gabriel because his career had been thwarted. His marriage was almost over. He did not know what else he had left. Perhaps he was just a coward, was unable to grasp onto what he had in his hands and was unable to obtain what he wanted. He had never thought that he was such a useless person. "What does it have to do with us that you want a divorce? If anyone sees you sitting here, my mother's reputation would be ruined by you. Hurry up and leave. Don't appear here anymore." Mary Ann looked at his pair of dull and lifeless eyes that were filled with emptiness. Originally, she wanted to try her best to point and curse at him, but in the end, she could only suppress her expression and chase him away. "Mary, I'm sorry. Daddy is useless. Daddy is useless. Daddy can't give you love and care. Daddy even hurt your mother." Gabriel Addison really wanted to find a place to cry. But now that his daughter had driven him away and completely touched the line in his heart, he couldn't help but cry. Mary Ann was shocked. She never thought that Gabriel Addison would cry like this. Just then, a silver car stopped beside them. Belle Ann got out of the car, and upon seeing Gabriel Addison, she was startled. "Mom, look at him." Mary Ann was still an inexperienced person. She didn't know how to handle this kind of situation. Belen spoke in a cold and detached voice. It's really embarrassing for a grown man to be sitting at my house crying. Hurry up and get up. What do you want to say? Go inside and say it. Hearing Belen's words, Gabriel Addison wiped his tears off and followed them into the room. In the living room, Gabriel Addison sat on the sofa gloomily with a haggard expression. Belen asked, "What exactly do you do? Aren't you afraid of that tigress of yours? If she causes trouble for me, don't blame me for being impolite. I won't leave you any face. Patty, I want to divorce Beverly Batts. I won't be afraid of her anymore." Only now did Gabriel Addison raise his head, and a trace of love still existed in his eyes. After comparing the two, he knew which kind of woman was worth cherishing, and which was to leave as soon as possible. Unfortunately, he spent his half-life to prove this conclusion. Is that so? I really don't expect you to have the guts to ask for a divorce with Beverly. Belen mocked. Gabriel Addison shook his head. No, it's me who decides to leave her. I don't want to live that kind of life anymore. Then aren't you afraid of losing your job? Don't you care the most about your career back then? Belen continued to mock him. Gabriel Addison shamelessly blamed himself as he lowered his head, his voice full of self-deprecation. I was afraid at that time, and now I'm not. Even if I'm forced into a corner in the future, I don't want anyone to torture me again. Though, I really regret my decision. Stop, don't talk to me about that year. I've forgotten about it, and I don't care about it at all. Belen immediately interrupted him with a cold tone. Do you really not care? Then why haven't you found a man to marry after so many years? Gabriel Addison had even thought that Belen not marrying could be because she was waiting for him. Belen could not help but let out a laugh. Her words were full of contempt. Do you think I'm waiting for you to change your mind? You are too arrogant. These years, there are a lot of people admire me, and some of them are better than you. If I really want to marry someone, I would have married long ago. I don't want to marry because I have a daughter. I want to give her all of my love. I can't think of any other way to love someone else. Do you understand? The threads of thought in Gabriel Addison's heart were completely extinguished. From the coldness in Belen's eyes, he could know that she would not be distressed because of him. But in the past, they had also fallen in love with each other, and made promises to never be separated for the rest of their lives. So, it turned out that there were some precious things that could never be found again after they were lost. Marianne, who was standing on the stairs, nearly cried when she heard her mother's words. Her mother didn't care about her own happiness because of Mary. However, she had been young and inexperienced in the past, and had even made her mother angry every day. Now that she thought about it, she really wanted to give herself a few slaps. Patty, I know that it is not easy for you to bring a child along by yourself. I also regret leaving you too. Now, I don't have the face to ask for anything anymore. Gabriel Addison still knew his own limits and would not make any shameless request. You go, don't come to me again. I don't care who you will meet or what kind of turning point you will have in your next life. It has nothing to do with me, nor does it have to do with Mary. We used to live a good life without you, so we will live a better life in the future, Belen said indifferently, chasing Gabriel away. Gabriel Addison's heart trembled. He raised his head and looked at the confident and magnanimous woman in front of him, feeling extremely regretful in his heart. All right, I'll leave now and won't disturb the two of you anymore. I don't know where I'll go in the future, but I want to break free and live my own life. Gabriel Addison finally thought it through and stood up with the intention to leave. Just then, the sound of footsteps came from the stairs. Gabriel Addison turned around and glanced at his daughter and laughed, then turned and continued to walk out. Mary and Belle stood in the living room as they watched Gabriel Addison leave. "Mom, why do you let him in? An irresponsible man like him. Don't ever meet again for the rest of your life, in case you get upset from seeing him," Marianne grumbled as she walked to Belle-Anne's side. Belle-Anne looked at her daughter gently, and touched Mary's hair. "You are still too young, and there are some things that you cannot handle calmly. Gabriel Addison come to find us. If we do not know the reason, then there will probably be a next time. I let him in, just so that he will completely give up. As long as he is not deaf and is not blind, he will know that I have rejected him, and I believe that he will not have the face to come to find us again." "Mom, I heard what you said just now. Can you not sacrifice your own happiness for me? Now that I have a boyfriend, I hope that Mom can find a man who loves you and gives you happiness. Mom, promise me, if there is a suitor in the future, you should stop rejecting him and enjoy the happiness that women should enjoy," Marianne earnestly suggested to Belle-Anne. "You stinking girl, you even know how to care about me." Although Belle-Anne scolded her with a smile, she was actually touched. This meant that her cute daughter was also gradually becoming more sensible. As she grew older, she would be more considerate and considerate towards her. "Mom, do you want me to introduce a boyfriend to you? I feel like you need to find a boyfriend to protect you quickly. As long as Gabriel Addison sees you being together with another man happily, he won't have the face to bother you again." Marianne felt that this matter should not be delayed at all, and she had to step it up. Belle-Anne was about to laugh at Mary's serious expression. She laughed and shook Mary's head. "It's better not to. What kind of boyfriend can you introduce me to? Don't scam me." "Alright then, you have to find it yourself in a hurry. Hurry up." Marianne could only urge her mother anxiously to not forget this matter. "Alright, since you don't reject, then I can definitely consider this matter. I don't want to be alone until I'm old, but this time, my requirements will be very high. I don't know if anyone will be able to fulfill them." Belle-Anne also had a vexed expression. Maybe it was because she was bitten by a snake in 1 year and was afraid of being bitten by grass for 3 years, and her heart was hurt by a man. It was difficult for her to make a loving relationship with other men, and she even had not confidence in it. The relationship between Mary and Belle was getting better and better, because now that they understood each other, they could understand each other better. Not long after Gabriel Addison left the Anne family, there was a man in a car not too far away who had already backed up the video he had recorded and was ready to pay the bill. Chapter 1239. For the sake of this family. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, a few days had passed. Alan and Anne's wedding celebration was set for today, with 100 banquet tables full of guests. All their friends and relations attended their wedding. The whole Wood family was full of happiness. Sure, if the relationship between parents were good, the atmosphere of the entire family had eased up quite a bit. One day before the wedding, Angela had brought a lot of gifts for Anne. The conflict between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law was once a battle without smoke, and they all disliked each other at times. However, they avoided each other and even were unable to see each other. Now that Angela had regained her husband's love, she didn't know if she had recovered from her menopause, but the way she saw things had also changed. In the past, she would be angry because of some little things. Now, she looked as if she had her own way of doing things. As long as the person she loved the most cared about her, she wouldn't have the leisure to care about those small matters. Hearing that her future mother-in-law had come to visit, Anne's face changed. She braced herself and walked down from the second floor. Since she had already decided to be the daughter-in-law of the Wood family, Anne could no longer be invisible. She must meet the people who had to meet. "Don't be afraid, I take care of everything," Alan quietly said from behind her. Anne rolled her eyes at him. "It's all because of you, and everything is because of you. You're responsible for it." Alan was scolded without any reason. In the end, he could only protest in grievance. "All right, my fault. Don't quarrel with my mother later on. You should think about our wedding. Think about my cute daughter, and think about me." Anne was already speechless towards this man. He really took him seriously. Angela was also a bit uneasy in the first floor. Hearing the footsteps, Angela looked towards the direction of the stairs. Anne was still a junior, and when she saw Angela's arrival, she took the initiative to greet her. Angela immediately answered unnaturally, with an awkward smile on her face. If she had known earlier today, why would she have done what she did before? Indeed, the rarest thing in this world was the medicine for regret. "Why do you come so late at night? Aren't you going to rest early?" Anne glanced at the presents on the table and asked with a smile. "I come here too. I want to talk with you." As Angela said this, she saw her son standing by the stairs with a nervous expression on his face. Angela immediately walked over and said to Alan, "Alan, you go upstairs and look at your child. I want to talk with your wife lonely." "Mom, you can talk, but don't fight. We're getting married tomorrow," Alan quickly advised his mother. "Don't worry. We do not quarrel anymore. In the future, we do not argue anymore." Angela knew her son's worry, and a hint of remorse flashed through her heart. Alan then looked at Anne and turned to walk up the stairs. Angela returned to the sofa and sat down. Anne poured Angela a cup of hot water. "Anne, you look. I come here suddenly today, but you are getting married tomorrow. I've thought about it, but I still have to talk to you. I've done a lot of wrong before, so I want to apologize. Can you forgive me?" Angela was also a little unnatural. After all, she had always been a proud person. It was not suit for her to apologize to others. After Anne heard Angela's words, she was slightly startled. She couldn't believe that her future powerful mother-in-law would apologize to her. "I used to be care of the family background before. Maybe it was related to my family. I grew up in the royal family, and what I learned was that I was born into a higher class and was naturally more talented than other people. All this cognition obstructs my thinking and makes me become a narrow-minded and selfish people. And there are many times when I really don't want to hurt others. I am just too dumb and couldn't speak, and which makes people feel like I am being targeted." Alan, as people get older and older, they suddenly understand the drawbacks of their character. "I really don't know if it is a good thing." Angela lowered her head and held the cup. Regardless of whether Anne liked it or not, she had always wanted to pour out some words to someone, because, at times, she also hated herself for being incomplete. But she always strived to be perfect, contradicted herself, and provoked many troubles and jokes. Anne looked at her in shock. Was this really the Angela she knew? When Anne first saw Angela, Angela had a superior aura, and only looked at Anne out of the corner of her eyes. Initially, Anne had thought that she and this woman, who might be her mother-in-law in the future, had no affinity. But now, Anne actually thought that Angela would change if Angela knew she was wrong. But it wasn't so heartless anymore. "Auntie, why do you suddenly tell me this?" Anne was a little uneasy. "I don't know either. These words are something I've always been unwilling to say to others. In front of my two children, I still need to maintain my stern mother's image, and in front of outsiders, I need to pretend to be a living, decent, and noble woman. I'm living with a mask every day, and my husband has left home after being angered by me for a few years. And when you start spending time with Alan, it was the most painful period of my life. I have a bad relationship with my husband, and I have a bad temper all the time. I become angry easily, especially when I see the sweat couple. So, when Alan bring you back home, I have a bad attitude towards you. Do you afraid by me?" Angela thought back to when she first saw Anne. At the time, her marriage was not going well, and her entire body was filled with hostility. She didn't get well with others. "Isn't it all in the past? I don't care." Anne dryly laughed twice, but in reality, she had kept it in her heart for a few years, as she always had a prejudice against Angela. "No matter what, I like you all the time. You have your own merits. Otherwise, when my son has so many good connections, he won't take them all. So it means that you have some sort of fate," which reminds me of when I met his father. His father is an honest scientist. He likes to delve into some subject research all day. We are in the same school classmate at the time, not in the same class, but also I often secretly run to see him, watch him seriously. I love him very much, because it is my own love. I do not pay attention to what kind of flattery. I want to marry him. Later, we really marry. I just know that he is also a young master of rich people, but he does not like the family business. He is only engaged in his love of research work. But I look forward to my husband as a dragon. As soon as we get married, I gave birth to a daughter. With the future of the child, I force him to inherit the family industry. Those days, I think I am happy. I have such an outstanding husband, and on the verge of getting a second child, but he's not happy." His outburst. On my daughter's 20th birthday, he suddenly threw all of his dissatisfaction, hatred, and moved out to live with himself, leaving his family business behind. At the time, I am a woman, with two newly grown children, facing the company's complicated affairs and being at a loss. But fortunately Linwood is quite capable, and accepts the company's affairs. Thus we have today's peaceful days. Our daughter is also a treasure, and is able to hold up for half a day. I believe that my granddaughter Crystal would definitely be a brave and strong good child in the future. Angela tried to recall the past, but her tears kept falling down. At this moment, she seemed to have recalled this memory for the rest of her life. This was the first time Anne had heard such a complete history book of the Wood family. When people get old, they tend to recall the old memory. I say too much to you, Anne. I hope we can get along from now on. I don't want to break up this family. I have my faults. I will change it. You have yours, too. We have the same goal. The more we can get across this family, the better it is. I will definitely control my mouth and not say anything more about your little couple. As for whether or not you're willing to be on good terms with me, I don't force you to do it. I'm willing," Anne said anxiously, her eyes also brimming with hot tears, as she said emotionally, "Of course I'm willing. This is what I've always been hoping for." Really, Angela could not help but laugh and cry. It's true. Even if you don't come today, I would have come tomorrow to plead with you, Eden said with a light smile. Chapter 1240. Allow to love you at the end of your life. After sending Angela off, Eden became much more relaxed, and turned to look at the things that were sent over by her mother-in-law. There were many valuable treasures, although her mother-in-law was straightforward, but the things she sent were realistic, and she had become more and more generous. This was truly a great gift before marriage. Is my mother gone? Hearing the sound of the car starting, Alan immediately walked down with his daughter in his arms. Seeing Eden standing there in a daze, his expression changed, and asked anxiously, "You all won't? Another fight? If so, who will you help? Are you on my side or your mom's side?" Seeing his worried and serious expression, Eden couldn't help but want to trick him. Sure. After hearing those words, Alan's handsome face was momentarily in a dilemma, as he did not know what to do. And, don't worry, once we're married, I'll definitely say some good words in front of my mom. I definitely won't make things difficult for you, Alan nervously said, and was afraid that Eden would change her mind one night before the marriage. If she wanted to break the engagement, wouldn't he lose all his face? He didn't want to be the laughingstock of the entire audience. Moreover, he really did love this woman and wanted to live together with her for 100 years. Is that so? With her hands behind her back, Eden leisurely walked in front of him. Raising her eyes, she sized up the worried Alan, and then pinched her chin with one hand, and acted as if she was thinking, "If you are willing, then I have no objections. It's just that your mom doesn't come over to argue this time. She tells me some of the embarrassing things about you when you were young." What? Alan's handsome face changed, then turned red from the swelling. How could my mother betray the embarrassing events of my childhood? It's true, I don't lie to you. Your mom says that she wants to make up with me. Then what? When Alan heard the word makeup, the worry in his beautiful eyes immediately disappeared, and his entire person became extremely happy. Then I agree, and deliberately hung him, then burst out laughing. Sure, are you kidding me? Alan was about to go crazy. Why didn't he realize that this woman actually had such a bad side to her before? She had to be punished. Alan hugged her, and directly hooked the defenseless Anne onto his chest. Following that, his thin lips quickly covered her lithe and deceptive little mouth. If she dared to tease him and not exert some power on him, would she really forget who was the true head of the family? You are not allowed to disrespect my mummy. Let her go, daddy scoundrel. Just as Alan was about to proclaim himself the patriarch, beside him, a little girl that reached up to his knees kicked and hit him with both of her little hands and her calves. The childish voice sounded to help her mummy vent her anger. Alan's body froze. Well, Anne, who was in his embrace, still smiled. Your daughter is watching. Are you sure you want to teach her badly? Being fiercely bitten on the lips, Anne was naturally unconvinced, and pointed at the helper beside her. Only now did Alan realize that he had been too complacent, and had actually forgotten about this darling. Daddy is a scoundrel, big scoundrel. Crystal ignores you. The little girl was becoming more and more proficient in words, and was even able to express her own little emotions. The baby was annoyed, because her father dared to bully her mommy in front of her. Alan could not help but squat down and reach out to hug his daughter. Unexpectedly, Crystal directly pushed him away, and imitated the way the Lord had let out a light snort, before turning to leave. All right, I don't want the position of the head of the family. I'll let you have it, you little girl." Only now did Alan realize that he indeed had no status in this family. Before, the leader of his family was his mother, then his elder sister, and now was his daughter. Seeing the man chase after his daughter with quick steps, the smile on Anne's face deepened. This home was very big, and would sometimes make people feel that it was very spacious and empty, but with the image of the father and daughter together, Anne would feel that this home was still very warm. Alan's wedding ceremony was held as scheduled. Linwood had been pregnant for almost 6 months and came to attend the wedding. Beside her, Billy William was dressed in an elegant suit. After fading away the temperament of the big boy, there was more and more masculine charm of the man. As expected of a man who wanted to be a queen, Billy William had not only been working recently, but had also been living a life where he had become more and more responsible. "Linwood, sit down quietly. Be careful of the child." Billy William was a handsome and elegant young master, but what he cared about the most was his wife's behavior. "It's all right. The child is fine." Even if Lynn was pregnant, she did not treat herself as a pregnant woman. Lynn still had to work, and she would definitely not miss a meeting. It must be tough on Billy William. He would worry about Lynn's safety every day. Alan, it was said that it was difficult to be a father, but Billy William felt that being a husband, it was also difficult. There were too many people entering Alan's wedding. Linwood, as the chief female CEO of Wood family, entered her brother's wedding day. She had to come out and help greet some guests. Billy Williams stood by her side gently and accompanied her in doing all the work, and when her waist and legs were sore, he helped her sit down in the chair at the right time. Other than the relatives of the elders of Wood family, the only other friends that were arranged to sit at the front of the table were Alan's hardcore friends. Dempsey and Claire also came over. Following that, Leo, William and Marian also appeared in public for the first time, no longer avoiding the rumors of the other people. When the reporters saw the couple that was rumored to be here, they quickly picked up their cameras and went over to take a look. Joshua did not come over, but his big gift was brought over by Dempsey, so it could be considered as a token of his good intentions. Anne anxiously waited in the dressing room, her fingers gently pulling at the flower in his hands, his thoughts floating a little too far. Anne was anxious in the makeup room. Her fingers gently pulled out the flowers in her hand, and her mind floated a little far away. In her memories, on campus, Alan often brought along snacks and some cute little things to block her way, forcing them into her hands. And Nana said some self-righteous words. At the time, Anne was just a good girl. Her family did not allow her to fall in love, but her heart was actually stolen by Alan little by little. Although she called him a bad guy on the surface, in her heart she was secretly fond of his bad guy. She clearly remembered that in a week or so, Alan did not come to school. She had actually sneaked into his house to see him, although she didn't see anything in the end, but it proved that in her heart, there was that proud and aloof youth. Now that Anne thought about it, maybe something had happened in Alan's family during that period of time, which was when his parents were at odds. After Alan had returned to school, he became even more taciturn, and became even more aloof and unapproachable. Anne mustered up the courage to ask him out, and gave him the love letter she wrote and also some gifts. It was also on that same afternoon that Alan held her face and clumsily kissed her. It was an autumn dusk, and the maple leaves at the back of the school were rustling and falling. Anne would never be able to forget that when Alan kissed her, he actually cried. Later on, She asked him if he was crying from being touched, but Alan just laughed foolishly while rubbing his head. And, "Are you ready? Time's up. Hurry up and enter the stage." Outside the door, the voices of her loved ones could be heard, interrupting Anne's memories. She suddenly woke up and realized that she still had a wedding to attend. "We're really getting married. Why does it feel like I've lived with him for so long?" Anne laughed at herself. Maybe she fell in love when she was young. In a twinkling of an eye. It had been 8 or 9 years since then, but now they were only in their 20s. There was still a long way to go before they could finish their lives. There was no rush. The fine water flowed steadily and they walked slowly. The scenery by the roadside should be even more wonderful and splendid. In the future, there would definitely be better things to remember.